Let's hear it.
You have been called soft
By who?
by a lot of Bears fans.
Soft in what regard?
I was too. I was called soft.
We all have
We've
been.
all been called soft.
So if you don't think that the Bears can handle Caleb Williams and Justin Fields in the same locker room with a good old-fashioned competition, you're soft. You're soft.
I'm soft, huh?
Yeah.
You know what? I've long learned to not listen to the vocal, whatever they are, the majority, minority of Bears fans. Because I'll bet a lot of these people were the same people who were shooting off their mouth 2 years ago in the preseason when the Bears beat the Seahawks in the preseason when we were televising the game. And I was saying that Seattle was going to have a decent year, that they were doing some good things, and that, I said that the Bears might struggle this year. They might wind up with the number 1 pick. And they were like, they just kicked Seattle's ass. This is why you're not a GM. You don't know anything. I'm like, oh, so week 2 of the preseason, that's why, huh? That's why. Yeah. And then what happened, we know what happened. And so now I'm soft for saying that, hey, you know what? There's a kid out there right now who's swinging in the wind. And to my knowledge, unless him and Ryan Poles have had some conversations, he doesn't know what's going on as far as if he's staying or if he's going. Ryan says that he wants to do right by the guy. He says he's still moving through the process, whatever that means. I don't know if that means he's still evaluating Justin or if he's just evaluating the quarterback. He's evaluating whether or not he should move down and keep Justin. He's trying to evaluate whether or not he moves down because he can still get the quarterback that he wants. No one knows exactly what that means. But to me, okay, so if you draft the number 1 quarterback, number 1 overall, or if you move down to, I don't know, you move down and still draft a quarterback, and you pass on one of the top 2 quarterbacks. I don't know how. See, there's just so many different permutations to this. But if you move down, so you're telling me you're going to keep Justin and just let them. You're going to let them just compete. So you're going to take reps away from a guy who you just drafted 1, 2, or 3 overall, and you're going to make him compete with a former number 1 pick, and every day have those questions surrounding those 2 being asked of everyone in the organization, having these kids look at each other like, look, I'm basically getting cheated here every day because I'm not really getting the kind of input put into me, into my development and my time, which we already know there's never enough time to help a young quarterback, really get to where he needs to get
now
to.
More than ever because they don't have contact with the guys the way they did back in our days, Lewis.
Exactly. So you're going to stunt the growth and the development of both guys. The guy who you just drafted, maybe number 1 or number 2 overall, and the guy who, by all accounts, still needs growth and development. That being Justin Fields. And let's take the human component into this. Right? Do you really think at this point he wants to be there? Do you really think that he would want to be there and would really be in the kind of headspace that you want him to or that you need him to if you kept him around? I mean, it's just so stupid when people start saying this kind of stuff to me because it's like you start talking about these guys as if they're robots and they're interchangeable parts. And this is just fantasy football or like trading football cards like I used to when I was a kid. It's like, just come on. Look, I don't know what Ryan has in store. I don't know what deal looks like is going to be most likely for him. But like now with Sam Howell getting traded from Washington to Seattle, which I thought would be a place that would be a nice fit for Justin Fields to go and compete with Geno, learn from Geno, new regime, fresh start, and they traded for Sam Howell. I'm like, is that because they didn't want to trade for Justin Fields? They didn't want Justin Fields. Ryan didn't like what they were offering. Ryan doesn't really want to trade. It's like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah. It's Lewis, I mean, look, I was undrafted. You were drafted, but you and our lives were competition at every level. So, like, that's nonsense, that I'm afraid of a competition. I just don't think that this is the right approach for all involved. The Bears, Justin, Caleb, and throw this wrench into the mix as well. Shane Waldron is not his first time calling plays, but it's the first year he's going to be the offensive coordinator with this team. Does he have to change his offense for the first 5 plays of practice for Justin to fit his skill set and then change them for whether it's Caleb Williams or Drake May. It's just like, I'm not afraid of competition, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel like that would be good for really anybody.
Look, that's the kind of talk that people have when they kind of like want to boil this game down to being something like it was, like we're playing Pop Warner football here, right? And we're just, and Johnny and Mikey on the Pop Warner 80-pound team just need to fight it out to be the best. Who's the best guy? And you got a bunch of, overzealous parents out there, like arguing about who should be the starter. Like this is professional football. This is not when you're dealing with a position that's this delicate, and you have invested the kind of draft capital that they're going to have invested in that position with both this year and in Justin also. Like, you need to make that situation about as clean, as healthy, and as productive to where every single day you are maximizing your ability to get the most out of this young man, pour the most into this young man so you can get the most out of him, and so he can be in the right mindset every day to put the maximum into what it's going to take to play quarterback in the NFL, and then be able to perform at a level that if he doesn't perform at, you can best believe the same people who are saying now, let's let him fight it out and find out he's the best guy, will be the same people talking about the Bears management sucks. Fire the GM. They don't know how to pick a guy. Fire the coach. They don't know how to develop anybody. Let's just start over. Then all those cliches will come out. Let's reset the clock again. Let's reset the clock and draft a guy. That way you can have more cap space and you can just build. It's like a perpetual, like it's a never-ending cycle when you do things like that you think that don't take into account the human element in all this, especially at that position. Ryan had it right when he said this. I want to do right by the kid. I'm trying to move through this process as best I can, as quickly as I can, because I don't want anybody, his words, to live in the gray. It's just that right now, like with each passing day, but maybe Ryan has a plan. Maybe he knows exactly what he's going to do. Our job is to try and figure out what he's thinking and what's going to happen and kind of read the tea leaves. And right now, I think all of us, we sat on set for the past 3 days trying to figure out, where's he going with this? Where is it going? What's the market telling him? Why are all these quarterbacks that are going to these places that you thought would be maybe logical landing points for him, they're picking other people. They're bringing in other people. They're signing other people. Could it really wind up being a situation where did Ryan Poles never really want to trade Justin Fields? Was he never really – now I think, now it's just – everything's on the table, I guess, because there is no new information coming out of there. It's not like he's going to call in and tell you. But it's, this is intriguing. That Sam Howell trade, that one for me, when I saw that, I was like, whoa, okay. There's another place off the board. So let's see what happens.
Louis, what about this? Because I've been telling people, a lot of people have come at me saying, Sylvie, what about Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes? What about Favre and Rodgers? What about Rodgers and Love? And I say, totally different situations. What do you than what Fields and Caleb Williams would be? What would you tell them?
That's not even close. They're not even close. Okay, so Alex Smith had settled into a role and was at a point in his career to where he was able to mentor Patrick Mahomes.
He was a Pro Bowler that year, too.
Exactly. He was a consummate professional. He had pretty much seen it all and had done it all relative to what his ability was and what his ultimate upside was. He just was. And Andy had explained to him, hey, look, we're going to, we're probably looking at drafting a quarterback, and we're going to take this because we think, we want to take it to another level. And he did right by him that next year and moved him on to Washington, and that was that. Okay? When you're talking about Favre and Aaron Rodgers, you're talking about a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback who was maybe on the downside of his career, but who had really established himself as a professional, established himself as a Hall of Famer at that point in time. Who's the other one that you brought up?
Then Rodgers and Love.
Oh, and Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. Yeah, look, there was speculation that maybe Aaron was going to be looking for an out and it was going to be time for him to move on, and maybe the coaching staff thought it was time for him to move on, not because not because he wasn't good enough, clearly, because he still had plenty of ability and was going to be sought after by many, many different teams. I mean, he was. I mean, in this situation, you're talking about a young developmental quarterback who hasn't even scratched the surface, and there's just no way you can make any kind of definitive determinations about what his career is going to look like, given what he's been subjected to, what he hasn't been subjected to, what he hasn't had at his disposal, and the number of years that he's been in the league. I mean, he's still so green. So those situations aren't even close to being the same. Here's a guy who's still hungry to try and prove who he is in the league. He's still on the ascent. He's not a veteran who has won a couple of Super Bowls, been to a couple of Pro Bowls, who maybe is looking for a change and or the team just wants to kind of reset and go the younger route. He's a guy who's like, hey, wait a minute. I haven't even been given a chance to really succeed here yet. I'm just starting to come on. Did you see how I started to play with DJ? Did you see how things started to kind of like progress for me? Like, that's not the same situation. You have a guy who's still trying to prove himself, who's still hungry to like climb the mountaintop, and then you bring in a number 1 overall draft pick or number 2 overall draft pick if you trade down, and you think that's the same situation as Rodgers and Favre or Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes or Rodgers and Love. Those are totally, totally different animals.
Yeah, and people need to be reminded that Ryan Poles did not select Justin Fields, so this will be his signature draft pick going forward. So,
and
Louis,
you would want to set the deck for him
absolutely
about as clean as you possibly could.
So if you had to project what you thought was going to happen now based on what has transpired to this point.
Tommy, man, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really know.
I really don't know. Because all the logical places that you thought, okay, well, here's a team that could use a young starter, you know, when you start looking at, okay, going back weeks ago, could he go to Pittsburgh? Would he be good with Mike Tomlin? Would he be good with that young offensive line and strong running game and some of the weapons that they have? You know, and Arthur Smith, play action passing game, compete with Kenny Pickett? No. Atlanta, we go down there with Raheem, you know, and go down there and be coached by T.J. Yates in the quarterback room and Jack Robinson as the OC and that Sean McVay style of offense, Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, young offensive line. Atlanta, he's back down. Makes sense. Nope. Now I start thinking, okay, well, if the obvious places where you think he could maybe be a starter and or compete to be a starter are out, then what places could he go to maybe compete / be a backup, like Mac Jones did, you know, going to Jacksonville. And, you know, so, you know, you start thinking about those places and, I mean, you start thinking about, okay, so maybe it's the New York Giants where he could go there and, you know, compete with Daniel Jones, maybe beat out Daniel Jones, maybe be the backup. Nope, they trade for Drew Lock. Or they signed Drew Lock. And then you think about Seattle. Nope, trade for Sam Howell.
Louis, Charles Robinson.
You think about the Raiders, but the Raiders weren't going to. They weren't. I mean, Luke is out there, so that wasn't going to happen. Someone had brought that up the other day, but I was like, nah, Gardner Minshew. So it's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know anymore. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports wrote an article suggesting that maybe the perfect spot for him would be Philadelphia as a backup to Jalen Hurts, who knows the offense. And if Howie Roseman decides that maybe in the middle of the season when somebody may get hurt, he's got an asset that he could flip for comparable draft currency that he gave up for Justin. Does Philly make sense to you?
I guess at this point, anything does. Look, I you know, in Philadelphia, one of the things that Andy Reid had established a long time ago was that the ideal time to acquire a quarterback was when you don't need one,
right,
because of how valuable they are. And remember, I mean, we had Donovan, I believe Kevin Cobb was still on the team, and Michael Vick when we signed Michael. And you know, it looked like a situation where maybe at that, you know, you had Donovan McNabb, who was still pretty much in the prime of his career. And why would you need to sign Michael Vick? Why would you even want to go down that road? And we went down that road because, you know, Andy knew the value that quarterbacks hold and how valuable they are and how things can change very quickly on you with one with one injury or one situation you just don't foresee and can just totally mess up your entire organization. And then what winds up happening? We keep Michael. Donovan goes to Washington. I mean, so it's just that's the best time. So, yeah, I guess, and Howie was obviously in Philadelphia, and Jeffrey's been on the team the whole time. So I don't know. Maybe that is something that they've talked about. Maybe that is something that they explore. Hell, I didn't foresee them making a run at Saquon Barkley. That's for sure. I don't think anybody else did either, because that's never been their MO. But when it comes to quarterbacks, I mean, I think you always have to entertain that kind of thing on paper, and then whether or not your team, your coaching staff, the individual players are set up to handle that kind of thing. Like, you're not going to disrupt the most important room in your building because you think on paper it looks great. And so what's the number one thing that everyone in Philadelphia who is following that team right now says is priority number one for Nick Sirianni this year and for Kellen Moore? Get Jalen Hurts right. Physically, mentally, from a philosophical approach, scheme, strategy, tactics, how you're going to get him back on course. Is the right thing to do, bring in a guy like Justin Fields, who is uber freaking talented? And some people may go, hell, he's better than Jalen. You put him in the right system. Hell, you give Jalen Hurts the number one offensive line in football. If you give Justin Fields the number one offensive line in football, Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, he may look totally different than he looked in Chicago. I bet you he looked a hell of a lot different. So do you want that? Do you want that kind of controversy in a city like Philadelphia where people were going, hey, didn't you just pay Jalen Hurts? And now this guy looks even better. Do you want that kind of thing? So it's more than just, swapping players, erasing one guy and penciling in another. And Tom, you know this. You know how team building is more than just there's team building, there's acquiring talent. Okay, there's two different things. You can acquire all the talent in the world, and it could be a terrible team. You can have less talent and have a very good team, less talented on paper, but be a much better team and win a lot of football games. New England made an absolute mastery out of doing that for 2 decades. Okay, so there's an art to it, and it looks different for every organization, and it's constantly evolving. So I don't know. Maybe there's a team that's going to jump up that is totally someone that is off the radar for all of us that follow this game, because right now all the logical places that you thought would make sense have all been kind of like locked up. And that's what makes this all the more intriguing. It really does.
I know you've gone back and forth, and we're talking to Louis Riddick about Justin, about whether it's him, whether it's Getsy, and if he's the one holding him back and how it didn't make sense. So if this was your decision, Louis, would it be Caleb Williams at 1? Would you trade down and bring Justin back and get more picks? What would be, if you were running the team, what decision would you make?
Look, like I've always said, originally, when looking at this, because I'm someone who believes wholeheartedly in the fact that players need structure and need help. Quarterbacks do. I don't care who it is. They just do. And he has not had the benefit of that. Okay? So much so to the point where if the structure, let's just say the base structure around him was so rock solid offensively, then they wouldn't have fired Luke Getsy and then offensive staff and reset on that side. So there's number one. Number two, we know that more weaponry is still needed. Okay? DJ's a great start, but that is not the end. Cole's a great start, but that is not they need more. They just do. So that being said, I've said, you know what? I think Justin, we haven't seen his upside. So maybe they should trade down and build around it. So then I start thinking, okay, well, is there information that Ryan Poles knows and that Matt Eberflus knows that none of us know as far as how Justin goes about his day, how he takes what the offense is trying to teach him, meaning offensive coaches, and how he practices it, how he retains it, how he executes it on game day. Is he holding the offense back, given what they're giving him? Is he not able to, use all the stuff that they're trying to give him? Is it all? I don't know. Maybe they know that. Maybe they've already come to the determination that, you know what, looking at this draft class right now, if we had put a guy from this draft class in the same situation that he had been in, they would have been better than him. Maybe they come to that conclusion already. I don't know. So if that's the case, not knowing all the information like they know, then yeah, okay, do right by him, move on from him, try and get what you can get from him. Don't have the kids sitting here dangling, and move on. So honestly, at this point, I'm fine with either one, because I do believe that he still has not reached his full potential. But if they know, them knowing more information than I do, if they've made the determination that if they had dumped one of these quarterbacks in the same situation he was in, they would have been a better football team, then move on from him. I'm cool with that too.
It is
it's
really
just that now we just don't know what that looks like.
It is
like,
really.
where is he going?
It's simple, isn't it? Like, the evaluation process is hard. I've said this for months now. But to me, the decision is simple. And I think you just enunciated it, Lewis. If you believe that Caleb Williams or Drake May or Jaden Daniels or J.J. McCarthy can take you somewhere Justin can't, and you think that that guy has to be drafted, draft him. If you you don't have conviction with all of these guys, and you aren't sure, then keep Justin and trade the pick. Like, really, it's not that hard. The evaluation process may be difficult, but the decision seems to be cut and dry for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I would assume that they already know that. They've already made that decision, given all the time that they have had with him and all the intel they've been able to gather. I would think that now it's just about what does the change look like, and when is that change exactly going to happen? Like, when do we get the deal that we're comfortable with? Is it sooner rather than, I'm sure, like he said, Ryan Pohl said, he would hope that this would be something that is done sooner rather than later. Well, it doesn't look like it's going to be, again, unless there's some team that jumps up out of nowhere now and helps get this deal done, because we know obviously it takes two to get a deal done. You have to agree on value. You have to agree on what the conditions are. And right now, assuming that that's what they're trying to do, which is move on from him because they made the determination that one of these young quarterbacks is better than him, clearly they haven't gotten the kind of terms that they thought they were going to get. Or the market is just that dry, which some people have put out there that, hey, man, from what I'm hearing, it's just not happening. Teams are just not that hot. They're just not, relative to what they believe Chicago would want. So why would we move right now? Maybe we'll be interested later, because we know every day that goes by, the price is going to come down. They're not really going to keep him. They wouldn't really draft a quarterback and keep both of them. That would just be that would be so unhealthy for both quarterbacks involved. They're not going to really do that. They'll move him eventually. And with every day that goes by, it becomes a buyer's market. And every team knows that. So now, look, now that the first 48, 72 hours of free agency have happened, as the new league year has commenced and nothing is happening, it just makes the speculation run wild. Because right now, I sit here and I look at these rosters and I think about this Chicago situation. The young man's got to be sitting here going, what the hell is happening here? Like, what is happening with me? Where's my life going? And I'm sure Ryan Poles is trying to get it figured out, man. But we just don't really know, like where this thing is going, which makes it every day even more intriguing.
Never a dull moment. No, it is every day on our show. Lewis, you're the best, even if you are a little bit soft. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Lou.
I'm soft. I know it.
Yeah.
All right.
Me too. Me too.
Take care, guys.
We appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Lewis.
There's Lewis Riddick. He's one of our favorites.